Mr. President, I know my time has been squeezed a little bit and we got other colleagues, but I just want to mention one thing to my friend from Louisiana. I love to listen to him talk. And there's a lot of things he says that I tend to agree with. There's a lot of things I tend to disagree with. I do want to make sure folks know what at least I, and I think some of us are concerned about, is you want to debate about any of these programs, that is fair cooking. There's ways to save spending. Count me in. Matter of fact, you were a former governor. I'm a former governor. Virginia got named best managed state in the country when I was governor. And you know how we got that information about line item programs? Because about a decade ago, maybe 12 years ago, Rob Portman and I did something called the Date Act, which gives you that line-by-line information where we can debate about the validity of these programs. What you don't need to do is put we got the name of one person, maybe not the name of the other, into the Treasury with, to my knowledge, at least one of them, we're not sure if they got any security clearances at all, to look at 1.3 billion checks being written out by the United States Treasury. You want to debate about what USAID does? Have at it. The programs can't be defended. But why would you give someone, a coder, the potential keys to the kingdom of the United States Treasury? Why does this coder or Mr. Musk's Doge Bros need to know how much the United States government paid the senator from Louisiana on a tax refund? Or the senator from Virginia, or any of that? I think it's a simple question to ask. Come in and explain yourself. And I'd love to go through more, but I know I got colleagues waiting too, because I want to get back to what we're talking about here, which is, how strongly I oppose the president's nomination of Russ Vought to be director of the Management and Budget, OMB. I've gotten a lot of grief. I supported a number of President Trump's earlier nominees. I believe a president or governor ought to mostly get their choices. But the remarkable thing about Mr. Vought is, and why I so strongly oppose him, this man is the author of Project 2025. You remember that? Again, let's go back, as my friend said, to the campaign. I remember Donald Trump saying, I'm going to lower inflation. I'm going to bring down grocery prices. And he also said, matter of fact, this Project 2025, I don't know what you're talking about. He claims we never read it. Instead, he's putting the lead author in charge of OMB. And this manifesto, this doctrine, this author, Mr. Vought, and I quote, said he wants our federal workforce to be traumatized. He wants them to be seen as villains. Well, I've run a business or two. Proud of that. I know the presiding officer is as well. If you want to get more out of your workforce, you don't go in with the plan of, let's traumatize the workforce. Or let's arbitrarily cut here, cut there, fire the good people, let the folks maybe not so good stay on. But that is what I believe is going on. Mr. Vought's vision of a traumatized workforce, or a group of folks that nobody elected, may not even have appropriate security clearances, going into the Treasury, getting access to the files that never had been subject to this kind of payment. There are these, you want to decide about a funding program, fight it at the agency that authorizes, not at the folks who write the checks. The only reason you want to find out who the government's paying, beyond what you can find on USA Spends, which was something we created more than a decade ago, would be, I would say, why does somebody who's nobody elected, this file has never been examined under Trump 1, Bush, Obama, unless you want to get in and potentially manipulate this file. Now, I don't know if that's for case, but I do know you don't put a coder that's 25 in to look at all this information. How many of those $1.3 billion line items are you going to be able to look at? Well, I fear there may be something inappropriate here. And these non-elected officials, and I hear my Republican friends all the time talk about non-elected bureaucrats. These aren't even bureaucrats. These are special government employees. And I can tell you from a national security standpoint, this information, because I know I'm not surprising anyone, but the United States government does some things through the CIA and other entities. For the most part, stays classified. You give up that information, programs will be destroyed, potentially lives will be put in jeopardy. I know, as the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee, the reason I like this job, I'm vice chairman of the Intelligence Committee, what these men and women do, often in the secret, in the shadows, they're never going to get thanked the way our men and women in uniform, but they have to do it that way. And we need to make sure this classified information, which unfortunately we're seeing a careless attitude from this administration that is stunning. I would point out earlier today, the CIA sent over in a non-classified form a series of name and letter of the last name, which could be discovered, of new CIA hires. It takes a year and a half sometimes to get a clearance at CIA. It takes another year to train you. We don't know if those names that were so carelessly thrown around are burned at this point. But you come back to what we're talking about here with Mr. Vought. This is the agenda. Take everybody in the workforce, make them traumatized. His words, not mine. Again, this idea that Mr. Vought and now the folks that he's at least indirectly deputized, or Mr. Trump is deputized, Elon Musk and the Doge Bros, whose names we don't know, whose backgrounds we don't know, whose security classifications we don't know, are now going agency by agency. I'm particularly concerned with what's going on in Treasury. And I have great respect for the new Secretary of Treasury. I think he's a good man. But I worry about what is happening right here. If it was just Treasury and these sometimes potential access to classified information, that might be one thing. But we've had for over 150 years almost, the idea that our federal workforce ought to be above politics, called the civil service. I already mentioned the fact that Mr. Vought wants not to treat those workers with respect, but he really wants to go ahead and just simply say, we want you traumatized. That person shouldn't be head of O&B. Again, more recently, we've seen an offer put out to say to the federal workforce, here, you take this offer to quit, we're going to give you 8 months of free salary. Well, I got a bridge in Brooklyn that will give you as well if you take that offer. And if you believe either one of those things are true, then you're operating in a different universe than reality. Because first, have you ever seen our president ever pay any of his contractors on time or fully? Let me assure you, there is no money in the budget to do all these payouts. And frankly, even the basis of the offer, I'll let the lawyers litigate it, is, I believe, illegal. We've seen this pushback at AID, but it's not just AID. We heard yesterday that the CIA put out an offer to all their employees. It didn't say, no, we don't want the spies to quit. It didn't say, no, we don't want our best analysts to quit. It said anybody who wants to quit. I hope the folks, the CIA, who know a little bit about deception, will realize this phony kind of offer, that at the end of the day, if our best people quit, who's going to do those jobs? You can't just slot in a new coder to discover how we identify bad guys around the world. That then got extended today to the other intelligence agencies. It takes years and years and years. We have some of the best people in the world who work at NSA, who are in the cyber domain. They can all make 10x in the private sector. Yet we're offering this fantasy 8-month buyout with no guarantee of being paid. I hope they will be smart enough and understand that this is not a real offer. This is a sham. But God forbid, if they do take it, how are we going to protect our national security? The FBI finally got the information on the 8 individuals, senior leaders at the FBI, who got riffed. Is it really the time to get rid of the top person at the FBI on cyber, or on anti-terrorism, or on counter-espionage? How does that make us safer in any form? Then we've got the funding freeze. First it was on, then it was off. I can tell you, some people might say, well, the FBI, CIA, even those government workers, how does that affect my life? Well, we don't know what the real status is, but I can tell you from Virginia, I got firefighters in Southwest Virginia saying they're not getting the money to replace or fix their tanker truck. I got an affordable housing organization in Northern Virginia say they don't know where they have to stop operations entirely. I got law enforcement that actually gets funded from some federal funding that has not been unfrozen, who are saying maybe we have to lay off cops. Already seen community health centers, who I saw today, that are shutting down. It's not servicing people. So I appeal to my friends, many of which we've worked together on so many of these items. Do you want this mastermind of 2025 who wants to traumatize our workforce, call them villains? Do you want our best people at the FBI, CIA, NSA to take an imaginary offer which probably wouldn't be fulfilled and then be actually set up to be fired later? Is that going to make us safer? I know I've gone on a bit long, not as long as my colleague from Louisiana, but I will urge my colleagues to oppose Russell Vought, and I believe I will then offer the balance of my time, post-cloture debate time, to oppose Mr. Vought's nomination to Senator Merkley. That, Mr. President, I yield the floor. I think I'm yielding.